And we are live. Hello, everybody. If you're watching this or you watch this later, how are you? Hopefully, you're doing well. This part of the world, obviously, we still have some restrictions, but they're not as bad as they were a month or so ago. So things are starting to slowly get back to normal. I know some of the things aren't going as well in other parts of the world. So hopefully, you're looking after yourself and you're isolating and following all the rules. The more of us that do what they're asking us to do, the easier it is to actually get out of this kind of mess that we got ourselves into. But it's good news. My friends and colleagues in New Zealand, they're actually lifted all their restrictions. They have no cases, which is amazing, so they can move about their country easily. Still can't travel there, though, obviously. That you can't go over there and have a vacation, which would be awesome if you could. But when some of our states start becoming, cases free, then they were thinking about opening the travel between New Zealand and some of the Australian states, which is awesome. Hopefully, the same thing happens everywhere else in the world, and we finally overcome this issue. So, thanks for joining us. I reviewed last week's podcast, and it was the very first one that I did, and I was happy to see that it was working just fine. So everything here is telling me that things are going okay again. I don't seem to have too many troubles with YouTube streaming. I don't seem to have the same experience with Facebook streaming. Might have to do a Technoramus video on that one to work out the kinks and figure out what is the best practices to actually get online. Because, depending on the software that you use, it can be a little bit distracting sometimes. So today I wanted to have a little bit of a chat. It seems to be that, let me just get my right window. It seems to be that we have a thing going on at this point in time when it comes to vlogging cameras. So it seems to be the flavor of the month. And there seems to be a lot of activity around that. Now, let me get my cable all sorted out. Because our friends at Panasonic this week made an announcement, just like Sony's, that they are releasing their version of a vlogging camera. I hadn't tested my monitor output, but I think it's going to be right here. So I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So anyway, our friends at Lumix have introduced the G100, hashtag Lumix Vlog Life. That's a pretty big hashtag. Anyway, these guys have decided that it's a hot topic in the market. And I must admit, as a previous user of the Panasonic Lumix G85 or G80, depends in which part of the world you are in, that was a decent camera. The only thing that I disliked about the camera, and it's a problem that it's inherent in all the Panasonic cameras, is their autofocus. Their autofocus really wasn't up to scratch, especially when it comes to either phase detect or eye detect, just like some of the Canon and Sony competition cameras. The Lumix autofocus hunts way too much, and it's very distracting. Like you can see it focusing between the background and your face, and when you're looking at your little small camera, you can't really tell that it's doing that, but it's only when you take it back into the studio and you have a look at what you've recorded, you realize that the whole thing's a mess. And although I love that camera, the G85, and I think I've spoken about this in a previous video, because as a compact camera, it just ticked all the boxes for me. Everything except obviously the microphone, or the microphone, no, the headphone output, and the autofocus was two things that it lacked, and it would have been the perfect vlogging camera if you had that. Now, then what happened is that they released the G95 or G90, and then they included the headphone jack in it. And it was amazing because we finally had this complete camera. But a lot of people were really, I guess, negative about the release of the G95 because the upgrade between the 85 and the 95 was just too small, right? Still a Micro Four Thirds. There wasn't that many features in order to convince people that it was a good investment from a quality recording perspective, although they did improve a lot on 4K, etc., when it came to cropping. But that autofocus has been their Achilles heel all along. And I know that the G9 has an improved autofocus, and but then you're getting into a more expensive territory. So I was really surprised when they released this smaller, more compact, plasticky type of camera that, or they haven't released it yet. It's still, I think, they announced it but not released it. But following in the heels of Sony, they've miniaturized one of their existing cameras. They've crippled it, taken a few features out of it, and then made a tripod hand holding stand and trying to sell it off as a vlogging camera. The only saving grace between this release and the Sony release is that they've got a wider lens. All right, so this particular lens, I think it's a 12 millimeter, which is kind of awesome because you will be able to get that proper vlogging field of view. But you are still, and I've seen a couple of reviews. I know Gordon Lang did one, and he's turned out okay. But then DP Review did another one, and they were more outdoors doing the vlogging, while Gordon Lang does it in his little hallway there in Brighton Beach. And so I think that was the big difference, because the DP Review vlogging was done in the open air, and I noticed that their autofocus was horrible, while Gordon's was okay. And so you can tell, there was a lot of praise from Gordon, and then there was a bit of, I guess, not so good comments from the DP Review guys. But what I saw is that typical, let's say, hunting problem that autofocus seems to do. I think Gordon may have played around with the settings a little bit more and got it to sort of just focus in the front, so that it always gets his face. But once again, I did see that ongoing issue. Hopefully, they kind of listen to what people are saying, because, if you're going to sell it as a vlogging camera, and that's what everybody sort of is looking for these days, they want to make sure that the vlogging camera does those basic requirements. And I think we don't want to step backwards. We don't want to just inundate, the market with cheap plastic cameras that supposed to be for a specific purpose. Believe me, the vlogging community hear that there's that camera that does it all, they will buy it. So I think the incentive is to create the camera that does it all. Now, one of the things, though, that I was really impressed by this particular camera is the little bit of the work that they've done with this surround sound, if we can call it that, where based on the way you're speaking into the camera can be trained to detect your voice or whatever's near it, and focus its center of attention on the sound where it's coming from. So what I mean by that is that the normal problem that vloggers have is that when they are pointing the camera at themselves and the mic is pointing at their face, you get good clean audio. But the minute you spin the camera around to film, let's say, a subject, the microphone's pointing in the wrong direction, so you're not getting clean sound. So this camera has built-in mics that sort of detects the voice, and positions it in the right way. So it points practically the mic, or I think augments the voice so that it picks it up from the right direction. Now I have to do a deep dive and find out the technology that's making that happen. One of the things that I didn't hear when I watched some reviews is how many mics does it have? Does it have two pointing to the front, to the side, to the back, or is it just one mic that does it with software? Right, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And how good is that going to be if that is software when you got very various people talking around the camera? How is that going to work? So anyway, there's some proof of concept testing that needs to be done in order to see how that's going to work. But it's a great feature. So now that's one feature that if you added it, for example, to the G95, right, and then put that audio feature and then call it the G100, that's great, because you would have been, all the features of the G95 plus the new audio feature, and then hopefully they get their autofocus right, and it would have been an awesome camera. And interchangeable lenses, which is one up on the Sony one, and then all of a sudden you've got this real vlogging camera. But I must say, once again, a missed opportunity. I don't know whether they're just trying to use this as a marketing tool to capture some parts of the market. Let's see what happens when they come up with the next stuff. Anyway, that is enough on the Lumix G100. I am curious to do my own testing when it is released here in Australia. Obviously, I'm not big enough of a YouTuber to get my hands on one of these just yet. But hopefully, when they do get released, I'll be able to do a hands-on review when it comes out. So as you guys may have seen, probably not, because I don't think I've got that many views. I did a review on WWDC with Apple early in the week, so there's a video on there. I just went through some of the enhancements that Apple are introducing with the iOS. I'm really happy with the fact that they're making some inclusions to allow people to change their default email and sort of tools like that, so then you don't have to rely on the Apple email ecosystem and then use separate apps, especially if you feel that you need to use Outlook or you need to use whatever. So what I mean by that is that the iPhone always defaults to Mail or Safari to do its business when you sort of hit links and whatever, and that even happens on Mac OS and iPad OS. So it's nice to see now that if you are a Google-friendly user, I mean from an apps perspective, then now you can tell the devices, hey, when you click on that hyperlink, open up Chrome or open up whatever, and it's going to be really, really helpful for that workflow, especially when you rely on the G Suite to actually get your work done. So that was a pretty good feature that I kind of didn't mention on that overview. But the other feature that I'm very excited about is the AirPods Pro. Now, what I liked about this particular feature is that they're going to introduce, let's call it surround sound for a easy way to describe what it is. So, as you probably may be aware, there is technology now that allows you to position sound around you, right? So that means that you can enhance the software so that if you have a sound coming from in front of you, you can tell the sound, through software to position itself in a way that it's on the right top side. But then if you want a sound coming from behind you, you can say, hey, make it sound like it is coming from the back to the left. Now, this technology, it's called Aural Sound. It's been around for a while. I made a video on how to get that sound right from your Theta 360 camera, who has that feature in the camera. It was obviously I made a video because I wanted to sort of remind myself in the future of how to edit that sound when you wanted to have this surround sound in your VR 360 videos. Anyway, this is coming now to the AirPods, and what's great about it is that when you recording 360 video and you're moving your camera around, it's gonna know exactly where the sound should be coming from. So, for example, if you turn around, the whole sound itself should move along. If there was something loud in front and then you move to the left, then that sound will disappear to the right, if you know what I mean. So it just adds this immersion. It's also good for gaming, obviously, on your mobile devices, and I think it's going to be something that's just the next generation, and I really like that because it shows that the active or the current hardware is starting to be developed with some new features instead, and so you see that from Panasonic. Now you're seeing it from Apple, where one vendor is helping you record the sound in a proper way, and then another vendor is giving you the way to listen to that sound. And, I think really this VR, virtual reality, audio, but as well as video, is probably going to be more entrenched in the years to come. So anytime you're sort of watching content, you're going to get this experience of sound being more enriching to the video that you're watching. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be pretty standard coming forward. Sometimes when technologies are fads, because they come in really strong, there's a lot of marketing around it, and then they just fizzle out. But VR is sort of being brewed, right? Like it's happening slowly. There's incremental steps. You're seeing things from upgrades to the controlling, haptic feedback. There's a lot of things that are slowly but surely coming our way as the platform is being developed. And I'm guessing that in about 5 years' time, we're going to get practically a full sort of surround experience when you're watching a video, instead of being in your home theater with speakers all over the wall. You'll be able to watch your iPad, and you're going to get that home theater sound experience straight out of your AirPods or whatever technology is out there. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a technology to watch in the future. So kudos to Apple to make that standard. I am really excited for what's sort of happening, and it's going to be really good to see what's going to mean for game consoles such as the PlayStation and 5 that's coming out, and also the Xbox 360, not 360, the new Xbox, which is going to be so powerful from a hardware perspective that it's going to allow you to add these additional features to make them more, consumer proof, especially when you're using headphones, because obviously, as we know, sometimes the kids stay up too late playing games and they can't play it really loud. So the ambience that you're getting from the headphones, if that can be augmented, that's great, because now they can play for as long as they want in silence and get that audio richness that you get normally from external speakers. So I'm all for it. Good stuff. So it's been an interesting week from the Apple perspective. I'm glad that they didn't introduce new hardware. I do think that the market's a bit down. Obviously, we know that the market's down. People aren't spending as much money as they normally do. So I'm not surprised a lot of these organizations are being slow in releasing new hardware updates, because they know people aren't spending like they normally do. And so it only makes sense. But for me, the more time they can spend developing software and making it right, getting rid of bugs, in the end, the experience just gets better and better for everyone, all consumers. So thank you very much for last week, some of the comments. And what I wanted to do is take the opportunity to sort of go through some comments that I've been receiving in regards to some of the videos. Sometimes the comments are quick questions that can be answered just by a comment, but unfortunately not big enough to make a new video about it. So sometimes it's something that I reply, but I also think it makes sense to reply to everyone else, to let everyone else know what it is that people are asking. And I've been getting quite a number of questions about the setup, so that I think it's going to warrant a video on, the actual setup that I've got running here. So I am planning to do one of those ones. But the first question that I got asked in the last week was, what microphone am I using? And so I'm not sure if you've seen previous videos, but I'm a Rode fanboy. I love Rode products. They're actually about, their headquarters are about half an hour from where I live. They are an Australian company, and I really love what they do. This is a Rode Procaster, and it is their podcasting mics. They've got another one that they've released recently, which is this one. This is the pod mic. Now, I like this one too. I normally use it when I have a guest or I want to make a video with somebody else in it. I get the big mic and they get the little mic because I'm the big cheese. Anyway, this is the mic that I like. I like the way that it reproduces sound. I like its tones. I'm a nasally guy. As you can see, I'm not gifted with a proper Roman nose, so I require all the assistance in sound as possible to make me sound like a normal person. Anyway, this is why I like this particular mic. It is, it looks good. It's a good-looking mic. So that was first one. Now, the other one, that question that I got, I'm getting a lot of questions, obviously, about my time-lapse video and my miniature effect video on the M50. So I've done 2 tutorials on how to get those things right on the actual camera. Now, with a miniature effect, it's pretty easy. It has some limitations, obviously. It doesn't do it in 4K. It only allows you to do it in 1080p, which is understandable. And then it only creates a video for you. And I'll touch upon that because I think I'm starting to prepare a new video on the best affordable time-lapse cameras that are on the market today, because there's a lot of interest in time-lapse. People love it. I mean, it is a beautiful thing to do, and if you've got time, and seeing the transition, of time is pretty awesome on video. So the M50 does it quite cleanly and cheaply, but Canon have kind of dropped the ball on time-lapse. I know up until some of the most recent cameras, they used to sell, and I still think they do, intervalometer, an external intervalometer that you can actually plug into your camera. Now, I know that for the R series and for the M series cameras, they haven't made a USB intervalometer, a Canon branded one. But if they have, please correct me, and I'll make a comment about that in next week's vlog. But they are really relying on their internal intervalometer to actually assist. But the restrictions that they have put on it is that it is not interval shooting. Now, that's a big difference, right? So interval shooting, or the intervalometer, that is a proper one, means is that you tell the camera, take these pictures in this way over a specific period of time. So the camera allows you to set the right conditions, the right aperture, the right ISO, etc., and then what the intervalometer does, it just takes a snapshot every so many minutes. Now, the advantage that Canon has for its cameras using the method it's using now is that it has this auto adjust feature. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, it senses changes in light, and it adjusts, let's say, the ISO over a period of time so that you get a more gradual time lapse instead of these jumps in light, which in normal time lapse has to be fixed in post. So there's software we can use to fix that. But this beautiful software, this Holy Grail software, allows this very smooth transition between the first shot and the last shot of the time lapse. So it saves you a lot of time in post-production, and for things like posting on social or whatever, that's just fine. It does the trick, it has the impact and whatever, but a lot of people, what they want to do is they want to do trickier time lapse. And I mentioned Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail is either coming from dark to full light or full light to dark. So, taking shots at starting in, let's say, in the dawn, and then all the way to midday or whatever, or along that line, and then all the way from, say, midday to nighttime. Now, I like to do those type of time lapses in winter because the time of the sunrise and the sun setting is a lot shorter, and you don't have to be out there for that long to actually get the same effect. While if you do it in summertime, obviously you're spending a heck of a lot more time out there, which adds some more issues when it comes to time lapse. We'll talk about in a second. So the software in the Canon camera, the R and the M series, allows you to take this particular time lapse and it wraps it into either a 4K or a 1080p video for you. Now, I've done a tutorial where you can extract photos from that video. So it's one of the videos that I've done in the past. But you're not getting raw images. You are only getting JPEGs, right? So it doesn't allow for you to manipulate too much of the actual time lapse. So there's a lot of cons when it comes to using that particular method. Now, the only one that I know currently that does internal intervalometer and does a good job is the M6 Mark II. Not M6 Mark II, sorry, the 6D Mark II. And that 6D Mark II allows you to do that. And I know a couple of online time-lapse people that use that camera as their go-to. And it is a good camera. It's got a good sensor. So I think it's something that's, if you're interested in a full-frame camera that does time-lapse, but it's not mirrorless, it's a mirrored camera, you should look into that particular one. So I've been getting a lot of questions about how to extend the life of the battery, to take longer time lapses, and how to extend or how to do time lapses that extend into the nighttime. Now, the M50 is probably the wrong camera to do it because the sensor is so small. The night photography is terrible. It adds just way too much noise. So if you're looking for a nighttime time lapse, I don't think the M50 is probably the right camera for you, unless you've got a really big lens that can let in a lot of light. I haven't done a test yet, but I do want to use my Sigma 16mm 1.4 to see if that is going to do a reasonable enough thing without introducing too much noise. But I haven't braved the elements and gone out into the cold night to do that, but I am planning to do that pretty soon. And I think that's probably one way to get around it. But to do, first of all, you're going to run out of battery life. So I'm trying to see if I can do a hack for the M50 on how to power it using a larger battery, external battery. Hopefully that would sort of help us out with longer time lapses. but helping us out with this transition. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. If you've done it already, yeah, leave a comment. If you've already done a Holy Grail using your M50, I'd be really interested to do it. Before my Lumix Panasonic G85 died on me, I did do a night to day time lapse using that particular method, and that worked fine. Because it has an built-in intervalometer, and that's why I still think if you're looking for a decent, cheap camera that does good time lapse, look at the Panasonic Lumix G85. It's selling really cheap. I think it's even cheaper if you can find it than the M50. And if you have the money and you want to sort of get a little bit better 4K quality, just jump up to the G95. That one's a little bit dearer, but I think that's going to do the trick from my experience. So yeah, so that was a lot of questions. I mean, I am planning to do more time lapse videos, especially the one comparing cameras. About which ones are more affordable that actually have built-in intervalometers, and you can do the proper thing. And I probably will do an M50. Why isn't it really good for doing time-lapse type of videos? So I'll start working on that script, and I'll let you know about it when it's ready to go. So now a lot of love for the Sigma 16mm. It looks like that has been a real godsend for the M50 users, and I think it's there for the E-mount, and there's a couple of other. I think they've got a micro four thirds as well, which is pretty good. So that's an awesome lens. I'm still using it, still loving it. It's pretty cool. Lots of love as well for the Roland VR-1HD streaming mixer. I did an in-depth review of that particular device, and I'm using it right now. It's streaming it straight out into the internet, and I've been pretty happy with the way that it's actually been performing. I really can't ask any more of the device for everything. For everything that I ask it to do, it does it really well. I really am super happy with the Roland and what it can do. I still haven't had the courage to get myself an Atomos. No, I always call it Atomos. It's Blackmagic ATEM Pro. I hear a lot of good things about it. And it's one of the things that always attracts my attention is the fact that I can configure it to broadcast straight to YouTube from the device. So for those of you who haven't attempted to do any live podcasting, there is one layer that you need to go through, either through using OBS or Streamlabs OBS to get your video from your computer or Mac to YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or whatever. And so you need this intermediary software, which is OBS. Now the the ATEM Pro has that software built into the actual device. And that is the thing that that attracts me a lot, because it means I can get my images directly onto the internet. And there are some caveats to this, right? So for example, if you're a gamer and you want to stream, let's say 1080p 60 frame per second content to the net, because that's one of the things you do. I don't know of any gamers that have attempted that on the ATEM Pro, doing it from their ATEM straight into YouTube or straight into Facebook or Twitch or whatever. So that's something that I'd be really interested to know. The reason I don't know whether someone's done it or not is that when the OBS is compiling the video, it's making sure it's not dropping any frames and it's not doing all this stuff. So what it's doing is sending a compiled videos to the internet nice and cleanly. And I use a second computer to do that. So it's got a lot of processing power. It's actually putting together the video and sending it out to the internet without any frame drops and stuff like that. My question about the A10 Pro is whether the encoder inside that device is powerful enough to do 1080 gaming at 60 frames per second out to the internet, or does it bug out? Does it cache? Does it lag? Does it drop frames? So that's one of the tests that I'm interested in trying to figure out whether it does do it or not. And so I'm gonna try to get a loaner or something like that, or maybe purchase it and then sell it or something like that. Because I don't want to have two devices that do exactly the same thing. And from a sound perspective, the Roland has XLR mic inputs this mic is plugged straight into that. I don't have to use any other device to give me good sound. I know a lot of people have asked me a question about plugging a sound mixer into the Roland. Well, I don't have to do that unless I want to do something special in the sound mixer. But if you want to do something tricky with the sound in the Blackmagic, then obviously people are asking that question. How do I get my XLR inputs into the Blackmagic? And I think that's one of the questions that may be addressed in a future A10 Pro video or software hack, or maybe another model. So anyway, it's something that we'll see product develop. I'd love to see it all in one. I would have even loved for Roland to have updated their firmware to do that, but I don't know if the internal processing is powerful enough to transmit that. I know the Roland does 1080 30 frames per second. I think that's the best it can do. But anyway, so a lot of questions about the Roland, which is really, really cool. Thank you very much for those people who have found the video informative and clear. I'm happy about that. I also did a video about AC noise cancellation. And that's also been getting tons and tons of questions. And I'm really happy about that because it was something that I learned along the way. I mean, how do I get clean sound, especially in an old office like this one that cabling isn't really up to scratch. And so, so I did that video as well, and that was received pretty well. So have a look at that one if you haven't seen it already, especially if you're trying to overcome some noise issues in your office or your workspace or something along those lines. So that's it. That's all I had. Thank you very much for those of you guys, for everyone that watched my last video. This was my rant this week about some of the tech news and some of the exciting little things that I've noticed that have got me excited anyway about tech this particular week. Hopefully we'll get another juicy week coming our way, and I'll do this podcast again same time next week. Hopefully we'll start something that's going to be regular for you guys to watch. And until the next time, ciao for now.